Welcome, dear readers. You are listening to Time to Read, a Winnipeg Public Library podcast book club. We are coming to you from our attic writing desk, better known as the Carol Shields Auditorium, which is located on the grounds of the old antique shop we know as the Millennium Library. We are, of course, located on Treaty 1 territory and on land that is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. In this episode, we will discuss Great House by Nicole Krauss. If there's a book you think we should discuss in the future, let us know at wpl-podcast@winnipeg.ca. Like a fading memory, I am, for the last time, Alan Chorney, branch head of the Transcona Library, and to my right is...
Hi, my name's Kirsten, and I'm the librarian at Great Library, Harvey Smith.
Hi, I'm Trevor. I'm the branch head at the Louis Riel Library, and my desk just has 4 drawers, none of them lock. To my right is...
I am Dennis from the Idea Mill, and I have nothing clever to say about myself.
And I'm Erica Ball. I'm the overly introspective branch head at Fort Garry Library.
A good book can carry me away from an average and ordinary day, yeah. So keep it down, leave me alone, close the doors and turn off the phone, 'cause all I ever really need is a little more time to read.
And you, dear readers, we couldn't do this without you. It's your questions and comments that form the heart of our discussion, so make us laugh or make us cry by emailing us at wpl-podcast@winnipeg.ca or leave a comment on our website, wpl-podcast.winnipeg.ca. Find out if your comments made it on the air by subscribing to Time to Read on iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, or other fine podcasting services. In a moment, Kirsten will start us off by giving us a brief bio of Nicole Krauss, followed by Erica, who will spoil everything with a brief synopsis. Then it is on to the discussion, which you can get in on by emailing us at wpl-podcast@winnipeg.ca or finding us on Facebook. Don't forget to stick around to the end for a special segment, Nerd Words for Word Nerds. Kirsten, over to you.
Nicole Krauss. She's an American author, writer of novels, short stories, and poetry. She grew up in New York and spent a lot of her life in Israel. She lost great-grandparents, great-aunts, and great-uncles in the Holocaust, and has said that what interests her is the response to catastrophic loss, and wonders if there is something inherited in the blood, a sense of loss of that thing, that place, and a longing for it. She became serious about writing at age 14 when she wrote and published poetry. She graduated Stanford, and then in 1996 she attended the Courtauld Institute in London, where she received a master's in art history, specializing in 17th century Dutch art, with a thesis on Rembrandt. She has been described as having a very architectural approach to writing, keying pieces together and seeing where the joints fit. She says she starts writing without any idea where her story's going. And about her writing, she says, "I think everything I write, strange to say this, but I feel hopeful about all the potential. I feel hopeful about the magnitude of life and all we're given to feel. I'm not shy about touching and talking about how painful it is, but I have this hope that somehow, in dwelling in all that, there's this opportunity for some kind of enhancement." And that's Nicole Krauss, author of Great House.
So this is adapted from the book jacket blurb.
I can't wait to hear this.
You're going to fit all the
this
pieces
synopsis,
together, right?
yeah.
It's super logical.
It can become clear for everybody.
Yeah, just lay it on us.
Okay, no pressure. It's not going to do any of that. Okay, a reclusive American novelist, a young Chilean poet who disappears. In the suburbs of London, a man caring for his dying wife discovers among her papers a lock of hair that unravels a terrible secret. In Jerusalem, an antiques dealer slowly reassembles his father's study, plundered by the Nazis in Budapest in 1944. Connecting these stories is an odd desk of many drawers. As the narrators of Great House make their confessions, the desk takes on more and more meaning, and finally comes to stand for all that has been stolen from them, and all that binds them to what has disappeared. Great House is a story haunted by questions. How do we respond to disappearance, destruction, and change? How are we affected by the physical environment we create, or that is created for us? And how these associations we have with inanimate objects, when tied up with our internal stories, become symbols of past trauma or joy.
Ooh, that's good.
It
would have been a
makes sense.
hard
I should have read the book jacket.
Yeah.
That's my
Oh yeah.
heavily edited book jacket.
Mm-hmm.
There's all sorts of squiggles and lines and
Yeah.
for those of you who
Edits.
can't see what Eric is talking about
Yeah.
because we're on a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's the only way you could probably provide a plot summary of this book is
High level plot summary.
high level of what the themes possibly are. I mean,
I definitely drew a tree of connections for this.
and I have a chart.
Well, I think the reason why it was maybe, well, for me at least, it was so confusing was because the characters whose perspectives you got weren't the main players in the story. They were tangential players to the story. So it's actually like so-and-so's boyfriend sister who is the player that we meet in the other story instead of who you would normally be reading about.
And you don't even get their names.
Sometimes you don't even
No,
know
or
their
you
names.
Until
get-
right at the very, very
Yeah,
end.
or you get like a nickname or something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and the fact that they're telling these stories, it's like there's no forward motion in the story. So you're it's like you've almost sat down next to somebody on a really long bus ride and this person wants to tell you their story and you just want to give them all the symbols like, no, I'm just gonna put my headphones on and go. Like, nope, they're gonna talk about their feelings and they're gonna just keep talking about it. And then they
And
take a
they're
little break.
difficult feelings.
Yeah, and they're
And there's
and
a
they're
lot
detailed,
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they're complex.
And the characters aren't entirely likable at first either. And I think that's why she spends so much time kind of having them tell their story or have their story told because you really get to know these characters. And so you sort of come to understand why they're
Why they come across so harsh.
Yeah,
or so
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always take notes when I'm reading, and I just have so many notes and like circles of like names and underlying of desk whenever the desk came up, but it
That's a
didn't
good
come
idea.
up all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's interesting in the synopsis that Erica was talking about how the desk gains more and more meaning, and I kind of I knew the desk was important because I've been told the desk was important, and I was like, is it really that important to any of this? Like, I know everything's supposed to hinge on the desk, but I don't know that Nicole Krauss actually pulled that off. I don't know how everyone else
I don't know
felt
how
about
much
the
she
desk.
intended the desk to be the central thing. And maybe that was something that was pulled out as a marketing focus.
Yeah,
Could-
because it is such a hard book to describe, and
Yeah.
so you have to have something sort of concrete.
Because there's other furniture and other themes like paintings and music
Yeah.
that occur probably more reliably than the desk.
And obviously, for me, it was my take on it was that it was maybe the author's intention to have the desk seem to mean something, and then it means nothing at all. Because part of the thing that keeps coming back for me for all the characters was that we're trying to find connections, we're trying to find patterns in the chaos, and we're trying to attribute meaning to things that don't really have meaning. And even Vice at the end, the antiques dealer was saying that I'll find this piece of furniture for the person, and there'll be a moment when that person realizes, oh no, it's not the actual piece, and then they get over that because they have to make this piece make sense. And so it's like at the end, the desk, there's the locked drawer, and I like to solve mysteries. I'm like, what's in that drawer? You know what? Spoilers, there's nothing in the drawer. It's empty. It's locked when he was like a kid. And I was like, oh, what?
And when I was reading some interviews with Nicole Krauss, and like I said in the bio, she doesn't really know where the story's going as she's writing it. And she supposedly didn't know what was going to be in that drawer until the very end as well. So she, along with the reader, is sort of figuring all
It's
this
sort
out
of
and
like
finding
dream
this out.
making then. Like it sounds like the way she writes it's her, and that maybe that's why it comes across as so incredibly introspective, is because I mean in dreams often when you dream about a house or a building you're dreaming about your own yourself.
Yeah.
And so if she's writing about these themes, then she's following her own levels of association, kind of in a, you could almost say like a psychoanalytic way, if that's what.
Well, and
if that's how
dreams
she
figure
writes.
really prominently in this book. Like everybody has these amazing dreams that they remember in such detail. And then remember, who was it who was really sort of obsessed with going to Freud's museum?
Right.
Or Freud's
that
house?
Was
Was
it
that
Nadia?
Isabel?
Yeah, the girlfriend of
The girlfriend of
Yoav.
Yoav, yeah. Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
Let me just check my chart. Oh, yeah, her name was Izzy.
Yeah.
Izzy, yeah.
That's right. She would go and visit the.
Because did Freud have something? Oh, no, that was Jung who had something to do with
Freud-
dreams, right?
Freud
well,
also
sure,
had
yeah.
dreams.
Okay, okay.
The interpretation of dreams, yeah.
So that maybe.
And wasn't it a dream that sort of set the whole thing in motion? Like in the very first section, Nadia's friend had the dream that then made him think of Daniel Varsky, and then put her in contact with him because he knew that he was moving or going back to Chile. And so there was, there's another example of how dreams play into the story.
So I also did read that actually this book started off as a short story about Nadia's story.
The first chapter.
About the first chapter. And it was called From the Desk of Daniel Varsky. And it was published in The New Yorker, I think. So, and I think then just obviously...
Snowballed
She wanted to take it from there and see where it would go.
Right. And it became Sisterhood of the Traveling Deaf.
So one of the things you said, Trevor, was that way back in the first chapter, such and such happened. And I'm kind of curious to know how everyone read this book, because I found that I couldn't really read it for very long at a time, like maybe like 20 minutes, 25 minutes. And then I was like, I think I've had enough and I need to put it down. So I'm wondering if anyone like tore through it.
I had the opposite because I started reading it just in bits and pieces, and I found it, then I was just like forgetting, and I had to go back over my notes about who was who and where they were. And then this last weekend, I actually just sat and read like for a whole day. Didn't I read that it was like National Stay in Bed and Read Day or something made up like that? Anyway, I did it.
That's it. That's every day.
And and then I was just sort of immersed in it, and I liked it that way.
Did you like the book as a whole?
I did. It's
okay.
I know, I'm looking around.
Maybe everyone disagrees with me.
I did, and especially, just already hearing some of the stuff that we're talking about, and I do love, it's like when I love art history when there's, all these like symbols in a piece of art that you're trying to sort of pull together and make some sense of it. That's how I sort of feel what I was doing when I was reading this book as well.
You're asking, Ellen, how we all read it. And for me, once a section was done and then I read another section and then I picked up that first section story, I had to go back, like you, Kirsten, and actually read that whole first section again because I had forgotten. So I think I've actually, if I was to actually say how much of this book I've read, I think I've read it 3 times because I've read each section twice. And then like Kirsten, just a couple of days ago, I kind of did a once through all the way through just to see how it all came together. And, no, I didn't like it. I mean, these kinds of books sometimes work for me, like when there's different characters and different stories and it jumps without telling you who the characters are. On a very rare occasion, I enjoy that. I didn't enjoy it, but there's no doubt that Nicole Krauss is a talented writer. There's so many little moments in there that are beautiful, so many quotations that I sort of highlighted. But as a whole, I was kind of unsatisfied. But I think maybe that was been the point that that this is, we're like I mentioned before, it's ambiguous. It approaches the story different ways, just like the great house of the Hebrew teachings became once Jerusalem fell. They were talking about that at the end, and the thing that became the Talmud. It was called the Great House because it was all like just fragments of people's thoughts and feelings and ideas brought together, and that's kind of what this book is. But no, I didn't like it. But that's just me.
I understand a lot of that. I think that it's a brilliant book. I think that I'm not in a place where I can appreciate it. Right now, I'm in a place where I'm reading for pleasure, and this was a very difficult. And like Alan was saying, I could read a little bit at a time, and then it just became too much. And there was too many metaphors and analogies and stuff like that going on for me to be able to just kind of sink into it. So I would put it down and pick it up. And then actually I didn't finish this one, but mostly because I got distracted and accidentally read a different book. That's what happens sometimes when I'm supposed to be reading. I tripped and fell and
read a different book.
It just happens.
That's called self-care.
So I think this is when I'm going to try again. And when I'm in a place where I can more rigorously apply my brain to a book because, January is hard for books about people who have had horrible things happen to them. So
I'm actually glad that we were reading it for the podcast because I don't normally take notes when I'm reading a book. And so then I think I was reading it far deeper, and there was a lot of stuff in there that really spoke to me.
Oh, her writing is gorgeous.
Yeah. It really
the way
is.
She puts sentences and ideas together is amazing.
Yeah, and sort of like the best kind of art you get out of it, maybe what you bring to it and what you put into it. And I feel like this book really demands your attention. And I think the more I charted things out and I looked for connections that maybe were there or maybe weren't, I got more out of it than if I was trying to just sort of read through it like a straight novel. And so maybe that's why I didn't like it. I was like kind of resentful that it was making me do all this work. When, previous to this book, I had just read 2 Michael Connelly books, which are straight ahead police procedurals as you can want. And then this thing came along. And now since I've read 2 more Michael Connelly, so this was like, like right in the middle of like, all I want to do is follow a detective around Los Angeles solving things right now. I don't need Nicole Krauss to get into my head.
This is not a formulaic novel.
It's not, you know. Although I will say something just kind of interesting is that you guys know I like to go on Google Street View to look at things as I'm reading, and I do it all the time with Michael Connelly books. So there's one section though, when I think it was the Lottie Berg and her husband, that section where they're in London and they talk about Hampstead Heath and Highgate Cemetery. And I was on Google Street View looking around, and you know how it leads from one thing to another. I ended up at George Michael's house, and it was delightful.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I saw it there. There it was, and it's just a regular.
Well,
kind
I had a weird thing come up that I'll talk about more with later, but just in terms of like things that lead to other things, and so I'll talk about that in terms of another book later.
Maybe we should bring in some reader comments for this. Lighten it up a bit. One of the questions, or maybe not, I don't know. One of the questions we asked was, do you have a favorite piece of furniture? And what does it mean to you? And was it an heirloom?
So Skipping Stone Press responded on Instagram and said, I inherited my grandmother's antique wooden writing desk, which stands prominently in our living room. So another writing desk.
Are we doing ours too?
Yeah, we can do ours too.
So I do like my first response was I don't really have a favorite piece of furniture, but then I kind of remembered that I do because we just set up in our living room this old wood couch thing that it wasn't really an heirloom. I think it was made by a friend of my parents for my parents, but it has 2 huge wood pieces that are arms and then huge wood beam that goes across to hold up the back and the front. And when I was little, we just had plywood on it, and it was in our basement, and there was like a futon mattress on it, and it was like just this huge kind of daybed comfy thing. But it was also very badly treated by us. So there's like marks from where we would be doing crafts on the couch, or like, and I think at some point somebody took like a screwdriver and was just like, whatever, because like, who cares? Like it was kind of, it's a weird creaky old thing, but we found it, and my husband put on new like actual straps, upholstery straps for the bottom, and we got like a little mattress for it. So it's super comfortable. And I like that it has these old like water rings from where we would balance a cup on the side of the thing. So yeah.
And so will you let Meredith take her screwdriver to it? Or?
It's not going to show up any more than what's already there. It's not going to do any damage, but I kind of like
to it.
I kind of like when things are worn and have that character and that history. So
I was trying to think about furniture, and this just came to me now in terms of maybe not holding on, but letting go. When my mom passed away, me and my sister inherited this old like china cabinet that belonged to my grandmother and maybe my grandmother's mother, but we weren't really sure. And I didn't really want it, but I knew that it was like, my mom always thought it was important, and it was always a fixture in my grandma's place. So my sister was like, I don't know if I want it, and she waffled on it, and she doesn't live in Winnipeg. So I was like, I'll hold on to it for like a year for you. And so it like kind of sat in the corner of my apartment, and it was just like, it was kind of like a weight for that year. It was like this big ominous thing that I didn't really have room for. And my sister like would like waffle on it. Like one week she'd be like, yeah, I'm going to try and arrange and have someone to pick it up. And then the other week she'd be like, no, that fell through. I don't know if I really want it. And then I guess, I don't know, last year she was like, no, you know what? I don't want it. And she had come to visit me. And so I was at work and my sister was at home, and like, she just arranged to have it taken away to give it to some charity. And I was like, came home and it wasn't there. And I was like, oh, this is like so refreshing to not have this.
I have had an experience like that in our house growing up. We had a huge old piano that was one of the only furniture that my mom had from her dad. And it had been in a basement that was flooded. It was permanently out of tune. Its keys were cracked. And we would play it, right? But it didn't sound very good. Yeah. And it was just big and dark and kind of like they were talking about the desk.
Yeah,
it just sort of like was always there.
Yeah, like a huge fly trap at one point.
And not always a good associations with it. So when she was finally able to part with it, and I think it's being turned into another piece of smaller furniture, but like that was a really big piece to take up a lot of space for a long time. So that feeling of relief. Yeah.
Well, and that makes me also think about like these pieces of furniture as inheritance, but also the desk representing sort of that emotional inheritance. And that we pass down to our
a person,
children,
or a story,
and
or a value,
and how sometimes giving that away or being free of it is refreshing. And like we had this old spinning wheel from my dad's family in Germany, and it didn't really work at all, but it was just sort of always in our living room. And when my parents moved to BC, their moving truck caught on fire and everything was burned, including the spinning wheel. Yeah. And like the big dining room table where we had all of our, family dinners, the wedding dress was burned. And I mean, so that was really sad that all those things but it's almost now become this story, like we'll talk about, well, whatever happened to blah, blah, blah? Oh, burned in the fire.
It was in the truck.
Burned in the fire. That's now part of our inherited memory
history,
and history. Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, it's sad, but
it's stuff.
It's
on the
stuff.
Other hand, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any furniture you want to talk about?
I was trying to think, like, I think, a couple of years ago, our house was broken into and a bunch of stuff was stolen. And at that point, it was a very upsetting and very kind of difficult thing to go through. But I wasn't really tied to anything. Like I missed the TV, not because I had an emotional attachment to the TV, but because I just kind of missed watching TV. And so, I don't really have an emotion. I mean, I like my bed, I guess, because I can go and lie down in it. And but I don't think I have a connection to things. But
it's
sentimentally.
the function and not the form.
I think so. Yeah. I think so. I think if I could just live in a place that has a bunch of IKEA furniture that I just bought last week, I would probably be just as happy than if I was around a bunch of like mahogany 400-year-old stuff. I don't know. That probably means that I don't have much depth. But I think that's probably the reality of as far as I go with furniture. So at the end, at the end of this book, when it turned out that Weiss couldn't get the desk, I was like, well, it's probably good. But then he went on and killed himself. So I thought, well, it wasn't the best. Spoilers for those who didn't make it that far. That's all I have about furniture. How about you, Dennis? Do you have any furniture-related stories?
No, I'm very much a functional person. I had a chair and a coffee table that are probably the ugliest things you've ever seen, but I got them for free and they were comfortable, or the chair was comfortable. The coffee table is just, I don't sit on it very often. Yeah, no, furniture is furniture.
One thing that Erica mentioned at the beginning of this book, or in her synopsis, was that the author, was it Erica who mentioned this? Maybe it was Kirsten, that the author felt that there was hope to come from. It was Kirsten. From this book, which I thought was interesting because
from her writing, that's
from
how she
from her writing, which I'm taking this book as an extension of her writing. But so with books like this, like the sadder book, I usually draw a lot of hope out of these books, and I usually really like books like this, and I don't know that I really liked this book. Like it was good writing, etc. But I didn't draw any hope from any of the situations, and I trying to figure out why that is, but I don't know if anyone else found it hopeful or felt any like bright shining light from the stories that were told.
if anything, I responded to the very sort of human interactions that she was talking about, the relationships and the dysfunction in the relationships, and how you try things and they don't work, and you look for meaning and you can't find it, or you attribute meaning. So all of that kind of stuff, I was like kind of nodding my head while I was reading, but none of it was hopeful. At the end, I was thinking like, well, what's the point? What's the point of all this? What's the point of the last 2 weeks of me reading this? Aside from being able to talk about it with you guys. That's how I don't know.
So what you're saying is this table right now and the readers listening in are the light at the end of the tunnel.
I think so.
Well, I don't know about hope exactly, but this resonated with me for just where I'm at right now. And in terms of sort of living in a little bit of doubt and uncertainty, and just knowing that, I mean, that's life too. And that's how it all works. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. And so I just could see myself in a lot of the characters in some ways. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In terms of just, maybe I'm just more in a darker place right now than
well, it's interesting you should say that. I think one of the things that I think maybe when I'm looking at sadder, more depressing books is I'm often looking at situations that I haven't been in, and I feel like maybe more of the situations in the book I could relate to more. Like, so for example, when Isabel is with Yoav and she like really wants to meet his dad and get that sort of relationship going, or to meet him, and he's like, no, you don't want to do that. Like, I've been in a relationship where I met the person's father and they like just hated me like from the get-go, and like it was like, whoa. And it was kind of, it reminded me of that scenario where it was like, yeah, I'm being judged and I will continue to be judged whenever I'm in your presence, kind of thing. So
well, and I didn't actually I wouldn't have described this book as a sad, depressing book either.
Yeah,
there are like the relationship of Lottie and Arthur. Like, even though he didn't know everything about her, I mean, they had what looked to me like kind of a lovely relationship. And there were a lot of these women that were just really strong women and doing things for themselves. And then I guess the men trying to understand them. Well, and I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I agree. Like when Erica was talking about from the book jacket, it being a terrible secret what Arthur discovered about Lottie, I was like, was it? I don't know that it was that terrible a secret.
I almost feel like
I didn't write that part. So
I'm not looking at you for that. I'm looking.
No, it's true. It was more, but it was. I mean, it was terrible in terms of like it being a huge emotional part of her story.
And that was like, the sadness that kept her.
Like for me, like I read the word, like the term terrible, not necessarily as in being something really, really bad.
Like terribly happy.
Yes, exactly.
like terrible that for Lottie or terrible for Arthur? Like I don't.
Well, giving up a child? Wasn't that what we're talking
about?
Yeah. So that's a terrible thing.
And also just bonus points for you guys for figuring out that guy's name was Arthur.
I know. That was one of those ones right at the very, very end. I'm like, somebody said Arthur. Okay, and I was like, and I wrote it down and I circled it.
I've just got Lottie's husband written down all over the place. I never picked up. So good work on that.
Well, and I think for him, what was terrible was to realize that she gave up the baby by placing an ad and just sort of handed the baby over. You know, that seemed to be something that really kind of shook him. He had already known about the baby already.
Yeah.
I think the reason, like we were talking about hope in this book, and I think that the thing about this book is, to me at least, it seems like the part of getting better that is the first part, which is really coming face to face with what you are feeling or what you went through. And I think like some of these characters, we're seeing them when they are finally coming face to face with whatever legacy's been handed down to them or the repercussions of their own decisions or whatever it is. And so the hope might be in that now they've done this work, and they understand their own insides better than they did.
And
but
that,
I didn't finish the book, so I don't know how.
And that emotional inheritance might be passed down now.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't.
Which, yes, I think might be true for a lot of them, but that makes me think of Aaron's story and his son Dovik, and you watch Aaron like come to terms with the relationship for his son, or with his son, and go through like that whole history in his head, and him being like ready to sit down at the table that morning and talk with his son, and then his son dies. Which was sad.
Well, he's hit by the car. Does he die?
Does he die? Oh, right. The father is coming. Yeah, he might
because
not.
then Nadia talking to him.
Yeah.
Because,
in my mind, he died.
You just wrote him off.
I know.
Character's gone.
But I liked what you said, Erica, about maybe if they've worked through this stuff, then that's the hope. Because like I don't think it's any coincidence that section of the story, Lottie and Arthur, it was called Swimming Holes.
Yeah.
And it starts with her always diving down into the darkness by herself, and he would stand by the shore, and then she would come up. And so it was like she had this secret world that he was okay with being in her life, but he wasn't fully in her life. They had this kind of understanding, and then at the end, he was in that swimming hole. He followed it all the way to the family that adopted her son, and then talked to the mom, and so it was I kind of think like, okay, there's hope for him at least. The nameless Arthur.
Yeah, like I feel like we could talk about each one of the characters like in depth,
Did we have any favorites?
I liked Arthur.
Yeah.
I liked how he always and maybe he shouldn't have as much as he did, but he loved his wife, but he's like, I'm going to let her do her thing.
Yeah.
Like there's parts that that have nothing to do with me. I'm just going to, whatever.
I guess he's
respect that.
Kind of the husband that Nadia never had.
Yeah.
In a way.
Because her husband would start off by doing things like he'd give her time when he came home to get used to him being there before he came into the room and stuff. But then he got tired of it.
Yeah, but which kind of makes me sad, because then you see Nadia reflecting on her life and being like regretting maybe.
Have I made a mistake? Have I made a terrible mistake? By the choices that I made. I know, man. Being a 50-year-old woman, reflecting back.
But it's not like you never see the 50-year-old couple being all like, why am I still with you? What life could I have had if I didn't tie myself to you? So,
did you have any favorite stories?
I
hated them all equally.
No. I think the whole Arthur Lottie story. I enjoyed being in their world. And of course, the sadness of when she starts becoming ill with dementia or Alzheimer's or what, and that that whole thing was all very, very well done. But no, I don't think I liked it. So.
That's okay. That is okay.
You be you, Trevor.
Yeah. We say that in the book club at Fort Garry is you don't have to have finished the book, and you don't have to have liked the book.
No, not at all.
I'll tell you one character I didn't like was the guy who kept talking about his son. Dove, like the father.
Yeah.
Like
Aaron.
Yeah. See, I didn't even get his name.
Yeah.
I just thought like this guy is a grade A jerk, and I don't care how much you talk to me next to me sitting on the bus. You're still a jerk.
I'm not going to be on your side.
He didn't win me over ever.
He kind of won me over by the end when he starts reading his son's story about the shark and the people putting their emotions on the shark, and watching him get invested in that story, and like,
but then all those questions like, well, how does the tank get cleaned, and and all this stuff, like which reminded me a little bit like even the Royal Tenenbaums when Royal was critiquing Margot's plays, like, well, that wasn't a very good play with the talking animals or whatever, she's like 12 or something. But,
But I mean, he was never able to actually say that to Dove. And I feel like that was also another theme that kind of went through every single relationship, was that things were held back and things weren't shared, and there were silences, and it was like, well, I'll just give them their space. And so these are the repercussions about that, I guess.
There's that hope, as you brought into me. He's still in the son's still in the hospital, and the father is on his way.
That's
so
right.
hopefully they can have that conversation.
The other thing that bugged me about that story was the desk never appears in that one, does it? Except for like Nadia.
Well,
talking to
Nadia,
him. But
yeah.
I mean, like the
Yeah,
two,
which is interesting because the son's a writer,
Right.
or had that writing
and it's
aspect.
set in Israel. Like
Yeah.
that part is in Jerusalem.
Yeah, so there
and-
were other connections, just not the
Right.
desk.
I like to see that
Although-
desk appear, though.
Although he had sent back his story to be locked or put into his desk and not looked at. But it was a desk,
Yeah,
not
right.
the
Again,
desk.
that's sort of like Nicole Krauss says, there's a connection, but not quite kind
Yeah.
of situation. You know?
Yeah.
And it's like, which is again, hurt.
Trevor just really wants to.
He wants to tie
that
it all
piece of
up.
I do.
yarn
Yeah.
on-
I
on
do.
the
I do.
Yeah.
You know, Harry Bosch always solves things at the end of a Michael Connelly novel. I'm just saying.
What did everyone think of the Leah and Yoav story, the brother and sister?
I didn't like it.
I mean, I was highly amused that their reaction to being accused of having an incestuous relationship was to play up the
Yeah.
possibility
they owned
of-
it.
Yeah.
I thought that was hilarious so that other people would leave them alone.
Yeah, which is what they wanted.
That was,
Yeah.
that was great.
Yeah.
Great fun.
I think it was like my favorite of the storylines is watching the brother and sister relationship together and just watching them have that weird inner world of themselves and Isabel being from the outside looking in. But one of the do we all have siblings here? You have siblings. You have Trevor. Do you have siblings? One of the questions we asked was, were you the favorite child? Because Leah in the book asks about it, or knows that she's the favorite child, and puts it as having a special burden. So I wonder if everyone was the special child or the favorite child, or if they knew who the favorite child was in their sibling dynamic.
Do we want to touch this in recording?
Is this too?
I mean, I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole, but
Okay.
what I am going to say is that I'm the middle of three girls.
Yeah.
And what I felt was the effect of birth order in terms of how milestones are treated by the family or all kinds of other things like that, which is only natural. And we're 3 or 4 years apart. So that's quite a gap between things. So, but that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, I'm one of 4 girls, and I felt like my parents were just super aware of treating everyone equally. But I was their favorite.
Yeah, I have a brother that's 3 years younger than me, and again, kind of like with your parents, like my mom was always like would go out of her way to make sure, well, if she did this thing for me, then she'd do it for my brother, or vice versa, and she even talked about this one quotation once with Jimmy Carter had a famous kind of embarrassing brother, Billy Carter, who was always getting into trouble and stuff. And one day, I guess, a reporter asked Jimmy Carter's mom after something happened in the White House, "Oh, you must be proud of your son." And she said, "Which one?" And she always kind of thought of that. So I think maybe I might be the Billy Carter in our family.
It's because this is something my sister and I have talked about in depth, and we both agree that I was the favorite child. Like, even though if you were to ask my mom, she'd say, "I love you both equally," and you could tell she tried to balance between the two of us. And I don't know if it comes down to birth order or attitude or similar personality.
Yeah.
I know I'm a pretty big sci-fi fantasy nerd, and that was something that I shared with my mom that my sister who's the way more outdoorsy type, didn't share. Or she was more rebellious than I was. I was the one who stuck to my books and didn't sneak out of the house at night and stuff like that. So.
And what did the mother say? I was just looking for the quote with the whole Yuri and Dov storyline. The mom was afraid to die and leave Dov alone with his father because she hated that relationship. And he always knew that Dov was her favorite. And she was afraid to die because she didn't want to. And then what happened? She did die.
She did die. And Leah knew that she was the father's favorite.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's the other thing is is sometimes, or maybe even often in family, the favorite child would be the favorite child of one parent and not necessarily both.
Yeah.
I only had one parent. I had 100% of the favoriteness.
I'm still not touching it.
We also asked about the fork going on the left or the right side.
Right side.
Right side.
Because that's the hand that I hold the red fork in.
But that's not the proper way to do it.
don't care.
Well, I'm just saying.
Well, I don't know if you know-
I'm not saying you're wrong.
I don't run a proper house.
I'm
We swear in there. It's a myth.
dogs and cats living together.
Maybe
forks on the right.
Yep. Yes.
I'm actually trying to agree with you. I totally hold my
Where's
fork
the
in my right
Where's
hand.
the knife go?
On the left.
What?
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, I guess it depends. What hands do you guys eat with your utensils?
Both.
Yeah, totally.
Kirsten
No
just
utensils at
eats
all.
with her hands. She just put a hand on her plate motion.
I've heard just recently that apparently if you're right-handed, you're supposed to hold the fork in your left hand when you're cutting meat, but you're supposed to switch over.
Yes.
I've never done that.
That's what
Really?
I do.
I've never done that. I've done everything with my left hand.
Well, are you
Wait.
left-handed?
Fork related.
Are you left-handed?
Fork left hand, knife right hand.
Knife right hand, fork left hand, cutting, and then why would I transfer? I've already got the
Actually-
fork in there. I just eat it.
So
Well,
that's
I
what
don't
I
know.
heard was proper.
Yeah, that's
Really?
what I
Yeah.
heard was proper. None
So,
of this
so
switching.
you're not supposed to be switching back and
No.
forth.
I thought you were
That's
supposed to.
unseemly.
Somebody told me that I was doing it wrong.
Are you left-handed though?
I'm right-handed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. So I do that awkward thing where I'll cut with my knife with my right hand, and then I'll have to switch my fork into my
Oh,
right.
see, I just cut with my
But
left hand.
often I'll just cut with my fork too.
Well,
God.
and what did
We've all eaten together. I've never noticed this. You
Because
guys
it's
are all
not
doing it
a
wrong.
big deal anymore. It's
I-
not
I-
like
I
remains
notice
of
all
the
the
day.
time.
It doesn't matter.
You guys, the simplest way is to cut everything with your fork.
Yes.
That's what I do.
Absolutely.
I almost never touch the knife. If there's a knife present, I just
then-
take the fork and I cut, including steak.
Those tough
Yeah.
cuts of
And then-
steak.
And then you don't need to wash the
Well,
knife.
sometimes I'm lazy and I just fork the whole steak.
Fork the steak.
like it's a popsicle
like
on
it's a
stick.
popsicle.
I have a follow-up question, which is related to this. Pancakes.
Yes.
Do you guys cut them all ahead of time?
No.
No.
And then eat them, or do you
No.
just cut as you go?
Cut as you go.
I cut like a bunch as I go. But if you cut it all right away, it gets cold too fast.
A bunch as you go, though. So you're halfway in between.
Yeah.
What do
so I'll
you
do
do?
like half the pancake.
I'd
So that I
rather
can eat uninterrupted for a while.
I'd rather not say what I do. I just wanted to know what you guys do.
Oh, jeez.
Well, now you have to tell us.
Well, so pancake house for breakfast.
So we can watch Trevor.
I'll tell you what I do. I think I do it a normal way, which is I cut as I go. Yeah, I've seen some people cut the entire thing up, and then which seems like a lot of work. But then I'm kind of envious because I'm like, look at that guy. He's got them all cut.
He can just chew and chew.
eat them without stopping.
Yep.
So anyway, I don't know. That's made me think of when we're talking about knives and forks. I was just wondering.
No, that's a good question. Maybe it says something about a person's personality as well.
I have one more pancake-related question.
Yes.
And this goes back to Michael Connolly. Harry Bosch, the detective, he likes to put syrup on his plate first and then the pancakes on top.
That's
And I've
weird.
never seen that. I don't
No.
think no one ever does that in real life. I think that just is some weird fictional
I
quirk
mean,
he gave
Somebody
his character.
somewhere, probably.
I mean,
There's
would it
like
matter?
7
Like,
billion people in the world.
I feel like I
7
most
trillion
often eat
people in the world.
pancakes at restaurants. So, like, can you imagine being
There's
like,
no
can you
way.
give me a separate
Yeah,
plate?
exactly. You're not going to, I mean, the whole thing of pouring the syrup over that stack, beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, I just throwing that out
So
there.
wait, hold on. Do you pour the syrup before you cut the pancakes?
Yes.
Yes.
That's crazy.
What?
Because then you only have syrup over certain parts of the pancake. If you pour it on after you
no.
cut the
Put
pieces,
a
then
lot
it
of syrup
soaks
on
in the
them.
middle.
Yeah.
Oh no. Yeah.
I like to put syrup on the
it.
sausages.
It's too syrupy
I
if
do
it's
that.
like completely saturated.
Well, I'm not talking about completely saturating it. I'm talking about an even distribution of syrup.
The problem here is that you're using syrup, which is terrible.
What do you use, Dennis?
You take some. Okay. Here's the best way to eat pancakes. And if you haven't done this, you really need to try this. You place a single pancake on your plate, butter, brown sugar, layer another pancake on top of it, repeat until you've got as big a stack of pancakes as you want. The butter and the brown sugar mix together into this delicious substance, which is fantastic. And then you start eating.
No syrup.
No.
Because you got the sugar.
I hate syrup.
Oh, wow.
But you got the sugar. You can use
There's
white sugar too, but
molasses
brown
in
sugar
brown
is
Sugar
much
would be
better.
better, yeah.
Much
Got the
better.
molasses in there. I'm going to try that.
I've
I
never
hate
too.
molasses, so.
But isn't that what's in brown sugar?
I don't know. If it is, it's the one thing I like about it, but I
I
don't
think
like
that's
molasses.
what makes the brown sugar brown.
I thought. Or maybe it's just
No,
like
no.
one of the substitutes
Sugar
for
is
brown
brown,
sugar.
and they refine it to make it white.
Oh, okay.
Oh, but isn't there like there's
multiple
raw sugar,
different
which
levels of brown sugar, right? There's
there's
golden
yellow.
and I mean,
And
I feel like we've gotten way off track.
Because I was actually just even
That's on
thinking
me.
about where did this question even come from in the book?
Yeah,
forks and knives.
yeah, but
No, I know, but where? Where?
I'm pretty sure it was Isabel who's at the dinner table and she's talking about utensils.
Okay, because I saw the question. I didn't want to ask where it came from because I thought I'm going to look dumb.
Or wasn't it?
I didn't know, so I just went
irrelevant
with
question.
it.
Who was it who visited the person that looked like Himmler?
That was
Izzy.
Isabel.
Was that
and
Izzy?
Joab.
Okay, yes.
Yes,
And then, and
yes,
he
that's
was
where it
annoyed or like shocked.
That old French guy.
That's
Yeah. And he was
That-
shocked that it was put on the wrong side.
side.
And then he just changed it,
Changed it.
and then he was okay again.
Yes.
But that was a whole weird thing.
That whole scene
too.
reminded me of like a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like the weird dreams you have, and then that little kid shows up in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know how much like the whole
So
thing is
many
like, oh, she's gonna
things.
wake up and she's back in London. Like the whole thing creeped me out.
Kind of wake up tied up in a cellar or something.
And that's another reason why I didn't like this book.
What, no cellars? The promised, anyway.
You've always been able to find good resources for your kids' school projects in person at Winnipeg Public Library branches, and you can also find some great new resources through our collection of databases. For instance, check out Explora Canada for Kids. Explora contains complete articles from dozens of the most popular elementary school magazines. All complete articles are assigned reading level indicators, aka Lexiles, and many articles are available in color PDF. You'll also find easy-to-read encyclopedia entries written specifically for kids, and more than 1 million images of photos, maps, and flags. To use this database, go to our website, winnipeg.ca/library, and click on the Databases button on the main page. From there, scroll down to Explora Canada for Kids and click, entering your library card information when prompted.
All right. Well, since Trevor doesn't like this book, we can segue into our most awkwardly worded segment. Can you tell me a book you would also like? And I'm very curious to see what Trevor came up for this one.
Well, I'm happy to go first, although I'm preempting Erica's tradition of going first. But
I can see Erica
I'll be quick. The one thing main thing I took away from this book was that it was a bunch of dysfunctional relationships. And so I read a book last summer called The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. And it talks about people have different love languages. And if you don't know what your partner or your child or your friend or your neighbor's love language is, you're going to be in a whole world of trouble. So this book to me was a whole bunch of people speaking the wrong love language. So just to quickly summarize, there's 5 love languages according to this guy. Positive affirmation is the first one. So if you're the type of person that likes to be told, oh, I really like that thing you did, or that was really nice of you, then that's your primary love language. There's also touching, where you just like to have the physical contact, being cuddled or have your hand held, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There could be other types of touching as well. But and then quality time, if that's your main thing, it's just spending time together and just doing something together with the other person. If that's the thing you like, then there's acts of service. If you really just like, you come home and someone's, clean up the kitchen. They don't say, I love you, but they do that. If that really, you respond to that, then that's your primary love language. Or the last one is gifts. It doesn't have to be expensive gifts, but if you just enjoy, someone coming back saying, oh, I was out and I saw this and I thought of you and I got it. And so that's in a nutshell, the 5 love languages. And Gary Chapman's thesis is that we all have varieties. We're all mixtures and complex people, but we usually have 1 or 2 of these that speak to us more than others. And it's okay to be in a relationship with somebody who doesn't speak those, but as long as you're aware that that's what the other person is into, and you're able to be aware of that and respond to that, then things will go well. So The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. I really wish one of these characters read that. All these characters
really
had that book, and maybe things would have turned out differently.
Yeah.
That's my recommendation.
It's really funny because some of these are, some people have these really, really strongly. I have an aunt who is constantly doing the acts of service thing. She's constantly baking and making food for people because this is how she communicates her love. You can tell, right? But if you weren't able to tell that, you'd be like, why won't she just have a conversation with me?
Yeah.
Or like,
I just want to hang out with her.
I just want to hang out with you.
Yeah.
But no, she's making like muffin tray after muffin tray. It's like, this is how she shows that. So,
I mean, it's like anything. It's probably not right, but it's an interesting kind of framework to think of things. Yeah. I kind of like it.
Consider that people might be showing these things in different ways.
Just being mindful of what people are into.
Absolutely. Sure. So mine was, I'm trying to think of the best way to do this. So it's the associations thing. So I was trying to read this book. And like I said, I couldn't read it all in a row. I couldn't sink into it the way I often can with books. And so I was wanting to read before bed. And on my bookshelf in my room are a bunch of books that I haven't read yet because they were gifts or whatever. So I pulled out Everything is Illuminated by Jonathan Safran Foer.
Oh.
And I started to read it, and it's really funny, but it's kind of about the same kind of things. It's about Jewish people and about going back to try to find like hints about your past and reconstruct family history and stuff like that. So I was enjoying that book very much. And then, and I was kind of considering it as a read-alike, as another book that you might also like. So I looked it up a little bit, and they were married.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know.
What?
Nicole Krauss
Nicole
and Jonathan Safran Foer were married until just a few years ago. So that blew my mind.
I didn't bring it up in the bio because I had also read that she didn't like to always sort of talk about that.
Well, no.
That they were, because she's a writer in her own right. And she did,
exactly.
Yeah.
So
there are lots of
I kind of feel like there's no way that I could have known that when I picked it up.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's possible that in the deep recesses of my mind at some point I had associated the two. I don't know. But anyway, I think it would be a good read-alike for this one. Mm-hmm. And I haven't finished that one either because I accidentally read another book. But that wasn't the book that I accidentally read instead of this one. I accidentally read another one instead of these two. Anyway.
I'm going to have to make a chart.
So, but
where's my yarn?
I'm confident that it's good because I read Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close a while ago, and it's good. Like I'm fairly confident in making that recommendation for Everything is Illuminated by Jonathan Safran Foer.
My book you might like to read, if you liked this one, is a podcast
called Time to Read.
We talk about
Still
this.
Not clear on the concept.
So Nadia at a certain point is like, what if I've been wrong about choices that she's made in the life that she has in choosing her profession or over her relationships? And that sort of got me thinking and reflecting. And I did an after degree in art history back in the day. And so I sort of stumbled onto this podcast called The Great Women Artists podcast by Katie Hessel, who is an art historian and a curator with a goal to readdress the gender imbalance in the art world, trying to bring women back of all backgrounds into the canon of art history. So she interviews other women, artists, writers, historians, curators about female artists, or a female artist that means the most to them. So I just finished listening to one on Frida Kahlo, which was super, super interesting. There was a great one about 93-year-old Betty Saar, who is an African-American legend in contemporary art, whose work rejects white feminism and reclaims the Black female body. There's also one about an artist called Unskilled Worker. I had never heard of her, London-based, self-taught. So I just feel like I'm sort of going back like 25 years to my 25-year-old self and kind of loving being exposed to this again. So it's a really, really excellent podcast. And there's also an accompanying, it was first an Instagram account actually. So it's awesome to look at the Instagram account as well. So that's Great Women Artists Podcast by Katie Hessel.
So for my read-alike, I thought I'd talk a little bit about how we came to pick this book, which was everyone said, Alan, you should pick this book because this is your last book for the podcast before I leave. But it also so happened that we were on a huge timeline crunch for making the newsletter and promoting this. So I really had a few hours to really make my final decision. So I went the reverse read-alike route. And one of my biggest book recommendations that I recommend to people all the time is Atonement by Ian McEwan. And so I was looking for read-alikes for Atonement. Oh, no.
That's one of my least favorite books.
So I wasn't even going to tell this part, but so since we reread Oryx and Crake, which was like my supposed very favorite book of all time, and reread it, and I was like, maybe that was like 20s Alan's favorite book of all time, and maybe it's time to rethink what 30s Alan's favorite book of all time, and I think I want to put Atonement in the running for that.
Nice. Yeah.
So I want to reread Atonement. But anyways, I didn't want to reread it on the podcast because I wanted to read something I'd never read. So I was looking for read-alikes, and Great House was a read-alike. And it was also in that list as a read-alike it was like, if you like Atonement and Revolutionary Road, which are both books I really like, you'll like Great House. So that's kind of how I came onto this one.
All that to say, it's your last episode.
It's my last episode. Yes.
Yeah.
Now it's time for everyone's favorite segment. Nerd Words for Word Nerds, the part of each show where our hosts boil down their most prevalent thoughts of the past month into one word. That's just me choking, not welling up.
I thought that was your nerd word.
Who wants to start us off?
I will then. I'm going to just jump right in.
Yeah.
I read an interview with Krauss where she talks about an epiphany she had at age 13 when she read 100 Years of Solitude at school. And the teacher told her that it was a book about nostalgia. And she thought, that is the word for this thing that I feel, which is sort of odd for a 13-year-old. So nostalgia, coined in the 18th century, it was used to describe more a severe homesickness. Merriam-Webster defines it as, number one, a state of being homesick, two, a wistful or excessively sentimental yearning for a return to or of some past period or irrecoverable condition. So this is my nerd word, nostalgia, and I hope that we won't have too much nostalgia for Alan, but also that Alan doesn't have too much nostalgia for us and have extreme homesickness, but you can always come back.
You'll be fine.
And you guys will be fine.
Yeah.
We'll all be fine.
Mm-hmm.
We will all be fine.
We'll have a picture up with a candle in front of it for the first next episode, maybe. I can go next one? You're okay with that? Okay.
No.
Well, I stuck with the whole great house theme, and I wanted to think of an actual great house. So my nerd word is Glensheen. And sometimes when houses are really big and fancy, they're given a name. So Glensheen is the name of a mansion just north of Duluth, Minnesota, owned by a family called the Condon family. It's a 39-room mansion built between 1905 and 1908, and you can have tours of the place. But what's interesting about it as well is that in 1977, there were murders in this house.
It's a murder house.
As a murder house. And you won't believe the murder weapon was a candlestick. But what's great is
in the drawing room.
And so the first time
Professor
I visited
Plum.
this house with Marla had heard about the murders, and she kept asking the tour guide, "Is this the room where and the tour guide was, "Oh well, we don't like to talk about that." And she's like, "I heard there was blood in the stairs." "Oh no, well." And so I went on the website today, and I think there's something in the FAQ that they must have added just after Marla's visit, because it says, "Is information given about the murder during the tour?" And it says, tours at the historic Glensheen estate strive to focus on life in the early 20th century, the era during which the estate was constructed. The unfortunate 1977 event is but a tiny slice of the rich history of the Condon family and their beloved Duluth home. Please understand that we do not highlight the tragedy because we choose not to exploit the event or allow it to overshadow the Condon family legacy. If you would like to learn more about it, 3 books have been published on the subject, and more information is available on the internet. So,
Marla.
The Glensheen is a great house. If you ever happen to be in Duluth, Minnesota, it's worth checking out. Yeah, Glensheen.
My word has nothing to do with this book. It has to do with the book that I read instead of this book, which was Evolving Brains, Emerging Gods, Early Humans and the Origins of Religion by E. Fuller Torrey.
Oh, yeah, you did say you were reading for pleasure.
So, yeah. It's super readable, and especially if you have any kind of interest in in evolution or in the psychology of humans, really. But in the introduction, he uses the word abecedarian, and I thought that's a wicked word. So the context is this, I'm quoting now. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam teach that there is one God, but most religions claim there are many. Indeed, there is an abecedarian abundance of them. And then he goes on to list 26 gods from across time and place in alphabetical order. So the definition of abecedarian is one who learns the rudiments of something, such as the alphabet. So it comes from A, B, C, D. Or it is an adjective of or relating to the alphabet, or alphabetically arranged. And yeah, so the history of abecedarian is as simple as ABC, literally. The term's late Latin ancestor, abecedarius, which means of the alphabet, was created as a combination of the letters A, B, C, and D, plus the suffix arius. And that's from Merriam-Webster. So that's my new favorite word. There you go.
Nice. So my nerd word is departure, and I've derived this from Roget's International Thesaurus. I'm departing, starting off, if you will, embarking on a new journey, taking leave of time to read, and this is my valedictory address. Please don't mistake this as a want to get away, move out, or march off, that I'm trying to beat it, split, or scram. I'm just at a point in my life where I need to get rolling and sally forth to new days and new opportunities. I've got the green light and I've got to go. This isn't a sinking ship. You, dear readers, won't be left high and dry. Time to Read won't vanish, disappear, or bow out. Kirsten and Erica, Dennis and Trevor, all have yet to retire, nor do I suspect that they will hasten off or hurry away anytime soon. So before I pull up the stakes and break camp, I want to say goodbye. You, dear readers, have run off and taken flight with my heart. You have allowed me to embark on this journey for 25 glorious episodes. I feel like I'm leaving home, defecting from this house which we all know as the Carol Shields Auditorium, that I'm losing this election in which I voted with my feet. But it's too late. I've already raised the blue Peter. So before I peter out, farewell, so long, see ya, au revoir, adios, hasta la vista, baby. And as Edward Murrow would say, good night and good luck.
Hey.
So, yes, my last episode. If anyone's wondering where I'm going, I'm moving on to Red River College, where I'll be working for the library there. And unfortunately, we have to sign off for this month. So it goes. Thank you so much, dear readers, for tuning into this, the 25th episode of the Time to Read podcast. In February, join us as they read The Break, a novel by the Governor General's Literary Award winner, Katharina Vermette. Get in on the conversation by finding us on Facebook or emailing us at wpl-podcast.winnipeg.ca. We would love it if you hit subscribe in iTunes or your favorite podcast service. We'd love it even more if you were to give us a 5-star rating. And until next time, make sure you find
Time to Read.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Time to Read podcast. We were talking about Great House by Nicole Krauss. Time to Read is a production of the Winnipeg Public Library. Our panel today included Alan Chorney, Erica Ball, Dennis Penner, Kirsten Werman, and Trevor Lockhart. You can be a part of our show too. Email us at wpl-podcast@winnipeg.ca with suggestions for books that you'd like us to read and discuss, and comments and questions about the book we're reading for our next show. Visit us on the web at wpl-podcast.winnipeg.ca. Check out our show notes with links to some of the things we talked about today, and take part in a discussion about the books we're reading. You can also join our Facebook group and follow Winnipeg Public Library on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Next month, we're reading The Break by Katharina Vermette. We're looking forward to hearing what you think about it.
All I need is time to read. All I need is time to read. All I need is time to read. All I ever really need is a little more time to read.
That was a good sign
sign
off.
That was a really good sign off.
Epic.
Holy moly. Sally forth.
Best use of a thesaurus in quite a while.